Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's video, we're talking about the purchase that I ended up making a week ago. Last few days, well, you watched it a few days ago, but last Monday we debated about what card I should or shouldn't buy with some extra money that I had because I was going to buy a different card. The guy backed out, and there were like 3 or 4 I was debating. Well, I made that purchase. So anything you guys want to add before I share that card when we talk about if it was a terrible move? Anything you want to add?
I'm just excited to see what Ohtani you bought.
Hey.
Here it comes. So this is the card that I bought. It is a Clayton Kershaw Bowman Chrome autograph gold refractor. So I actually think it looks really good in the BGS slab. I think the subgrades all being above 8 or above, I think is really good. I think the autograph at the 10 grade looks really good. And when I saw this photo, I knew I was going to buy this card. I ended up not winning the Mike Trout gold PSA 1010 autograph. And it went for it went for 10,600. And I was willing to go to like 12 to 13,000 on it. But I had like 100% of the cash ready for this card. I didn't have the cash ready for that card. Plus, I'm pretty sure no matter what I bid, I was going to lose to the guy I was going against, if that makes sense. So ended up with this. So what do you guys think? What's your thoughts?
It's a funny looking Ohtani card, Scott.
This is, yeah, he looks very weird in this photo, right? How old is Ohtani in 2006? 10 years old, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
You definitely have a thing lately for left-handed pitchers in their 30s. This might be a new fetish for you.
Yeah, I got the Kershaw. I got the Chris Sale.
Yeah.
You guys seem super thrilled so far from what I've seen. Phil, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. One of the best pitcher peaks ever, right? Is that right, Scott?
It is.
Nice war. Anything we get from here on out is just gravy. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. The card is sweet. They had very few parallels back then. Did they have? So what did we have for parallel autos? A blue?
There's a X-Fractor, blue, gold, orange, red. There's only 5.
Okay.
Plus the base refractor, I believe. So, I mean, outside of that. But compare it to now where there's way more, right?
Yeah. I like that. The centering strikes me as being very solid. You know, if you overlook the 8 grade overall, which kind of sucks. Personally, I might leave this in a Beckett holder just because we've got the 10 auto right there, even though it'll probably grade a 10 auto PSA too, which would be pretty cool. Good for you, Scott. Now, when are you going to sell it and buy something
That's the thing. I gotta hold this one. All right, Chris, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, if you're going to buy a Clayton Kershaw card, this is the best Clayton Kershaw card to buy. Like, it's a gold. The auto's great. I would have gone for an Ohtani if it were my money. But I mean, if I know you like Kershaw, he's obviously done everything you could ever ask a pitcher to do. Like Phil just said, like his peak it's probably a top 5 pitcher peak of all time. It's right up there with like Pedro. He was incredible. So I mean, this is a great card.
Thanks. Ty?
Well, I think you should be thankful that Chris doesn't really approve too much of this based on last year's track record. We're not into this year's season yet. Yeah. The nice thing is it doesn't really matter what happens to Kershaw at this point, unlike Ohtani and unlike everybody else who's still playing in the prime of their careers. Kershaw is, not there yet. Can you pull that back up, Scott? Because I actually have a question.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't know the answer to this. Maybe you guys do about grading autos. So it looks good. It doesn't look streaky or faded or anything like that necessarily. But where I guess I don't even know what letters those are supposed to be. They look like hieroglyphs, but it looks like part of it's like starting to bleed into the nameplate where the Clayton is, and then part of it is into the rookie autographs or the Topps autograph thing. Do some companies not like dock for that if they're not like squarely in the space where it's supposed to be? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I thought they would like dock you down for that, but
if you're falling off the sticker, yes, you'd be docked. If you're falling off the space, but not the edge of the card, you won't get docked by PSA. But now that I'm zoomed in on this, maybe the auto does have a couple flaws with it. So yeah, I think you got to keep it in a Beckett holder.
Only flaws right here. Everything, like literally, the autograph looks perfect, which is partially why I went with the card. Right here, it's not like faded. It's just the way that he signed. Very like much on the tail of all of his autographs is that way. But regardless, got the 10 grade. And I think it's very close. Yeah, at worst, it's a true 9.
So I have three different like pathways I could see this card going from a price trajectory perspective. Maybe not over the next year, but let's call it over the next 5 years. If this was a card that was a longer term hold, or maybe beyond that. There's this scenario where Paul Skeens, whose prices obviously we've talked about are incredibly high, and especially for a pitcher, there's a lot of risk with him, but also maybe a lot of upside still. If Paul Skeens has like an incredibly dominant run in baseball over the next few years, and no other pitcher really does, let's say, I hope it's not the case, but let's say Skubal falls off a little bit and other pitchers who have been really good. We've seen a lot of recent Cy Young winners just not be able to sustain it, and they go through surgeries and other things. So let's say there's a scenario where Skeens keeps the hype train going as this like dominant power pitcher, and he's on pace to be have a really good career, but nobody else is doing it. Maybe that emphasis on this hyped up player now puts some juice into the like legacy all-time great starting pitcher market. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if that would help Verlander, Kershaw, Scherzer, Maddox, others. Maybe it wouldn't hurt. I don't think it would hurt at all. There's also the possibility, though, that every starting pitcher just continues to get hurt regularly for the rest of time, that none of them can sustain, that nobody pitches more than 5 or 6 innings a game ever. Nobody's having 300 strikeout seasons. That doesn't exist anymore. Maybe that ends up really helping these last 3 guys who are sort of a last of a dying breed with, the aforementioned guys. Or the third scenario is if starting pitchers become more irrelevant and obsolete than they've ever been in history, that people just completely stop caring about starting pitchers even less than they do now, which is significantly less than hitters. I don't know which one of those is the most likely or which one could happen, but I'm just sort of like projecting out the way baseball is right now and how that might play into how people view these guys, historically. I don't think it would be the last one. I tend to lead in the direction of like, if you have these guys who are incredibly dominant and nobody's doing what they do today, hopefully the hobby would remember them and sort of pay tribute to that. But I don't know what you guys think about that.
It's so hard to compare players across generations. And by that, I mean, looking at the 90s overproduction era, then you've got the rare insert era all in one, and comparing those prices against today's prices. So what I'm saying is that if Kershaw gets the love, then Randy Johnson, Greg Maddux, and Pedro need to get a little bit more love. But I can't even really tell how much love there is for those players. Maybe it's because I don't understand the 90s insert market enough.
They have, Adrian Martinez has great value.
I know he has some sales, $3,000 to $4,000 plus. Some of those might have been shilled auctions and stuff, but he's got value. And so does Maddux now, and so does Randy Johnson now. Because for a while, we couldn't separate out, why do these pitchers have no value? Is it because they pitched during an overproduction era? Or is it because the hobby just doesn't like pitchers aside from Sandy Koufax and just like a handful of others, right? So I guess if they have value, to your point, Scott, then Kershaw would be in standing to just maybe gain in popularity in time, potentially, even if it is like really, really slow growth. As Ty's saying, most likely scenario, you're not going to get guys that are pitching 220 plus innings 3-4 years in a row because of, it would take a separate episode to get into all the reasons why. And then more attention's on the Justin Verlanders, the guys that got to 3,000 strikeouts. Kershaw's not yet there, but he should, and others. And I agree with what you're saying, Ty. If Paul Skeens go on, if he wins like 3 Cy Youngs in 4 or 5 years, I don't think that necessarily hurts Kershaw because their collectability doesn't really overlap just based on like when their prime happened, when the peak happened, even though their playing days are a little bit overlapping.
So a couple things on this particular card that I like in comparison to other pitchers. First, I always run story polls on my Instagram. Usually it's out of a selfish motive of just gathering data information, but also it's fun to make videos on it and to talk about it and stuff. I compared him to Verlander, who I think is the only modern pitcher, no offense to Scherzer, that's really comparable in regards to legacy. I don't think Scherzer's quite there, personally. And I like Scherzer. I've always liked Scherzer. But one thing that Kershaw has, and by the way, he was voted as generational while Verlander wasn't quite as high, and people said they viewed Kershaw's cards much more favorably. They'd rather own his cards, and they'll be worth more in the long run. So, like, I kind of just asked how the sentiment currently is, and I think that's accurate. And really, I think a lot of it goes back to him being a lifetime Dodger. I think that's a huge deal that a lot of pitchers don't have. I think Koufax, if you'd switched teams, it wouldn't have been quite the same thing. I think for someone like Verlander, that hurts going to 3 or 4 different teams now. And so that's a big part. And I know like Kershaw's had his moments that were disappointing to Dodgers fans, but now that we're in this like euphoric state of Dodgers baseball and this amazing era that we're in, I think it's really going to not be looked at as negative if that kind of sits right. And so I think that all the new Dodgers fans, they're going to look at Kershaw as either the best or second best pitcher of Dodgers history, probably the best in regards to regular season for sure. And I think that's going to elevate his cards in the long run. I really do. I really think that's going to matter. If you look at his peak versus other pitchers, it's just better than any modern pitcher. By modern, I mean at least since that Pedro, Randy Johnson class retired. Randy Johnson and Pedro are probably 2 of the top 5 best pitchers ever post-integration, right? But it's just one of those things where this card has so much to it. Plus, it's a gold Bowman chromatograph of an era that this is like when it first started. It was the infancy of it all. And it's just a card I thought was cool, right? It's one of those things where I bought a card because I wanted to have the card. And I think it's fun to even hold it now. And I can't say that about a lot of other cards. And I paid a good price for this compared to what the market was. And like it's less than the base Ohtani BGS Rock Card Review 9. And I just feel like there's so much more long-term upside versus this if I have the ability to hold it for the long term. That's kind of what it comes down to. So
yeah, I'm curious to see like how fidgety you get with this card.
Only way I'll get rid of it is if I trade it. Like this is actually I already thought this out. The good thing about this card is if I want to sell it, 1, I don't think I'll lose money. That's another thing. The floor is really high, so it's a safe card. 2, it's one of those like appreciating long-term cards. And then 3, with this one, if I do want to get rid of it, I'm going to trade it to a Dodgers fan who has no Ohtani because he'll want this card. That happened that's what happened at the National a few years ago. I had a Mike Trout Bowman chromatograph. Guy had a ton of Otanis. He was willing to trade one because he's an Angels fan and wanted the Trout. And I got the Trout, and then I got the Ohtani, then I traded it for a Pujols. But either way, that is how that happened, and that's how this will happen. Like that's my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of the cards you were looking at, the Kershaw seems the safest. Like it has like the most solid floor kind of built in, barring like unless Kershaw starts dogfighting or something, the card should be fine. I shouldn't even say that, but outside chance, I suppose there always is.
What's his masseuse parlor? Parlor attendance.
We saw the Mariano Rivera stuff just came out. That could be
that's not great. That's not great.
Anyway, sorry for cutting you off. What were you saying?
Yeah, I don't remember. A lot of people in the comments were not happy or not happy so far. They were pretty aggressive about not buying a Trout, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
that gold Trout was a spectacular card, just beautiful. But I'd say like 30% of our comments were bashing that card. I was really surprised.
There's such bad taste in their mouths. That's all it is from 5 years of injury, I guess. But
yeah,
only takes one season to wash that away. It feels like.
Yeah. Wow. I wonder how much of that with Trout is. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who came into the hobby in the last 5 years were baseball fans before that. You know, I don't know what percentage of people who started collecting cards, baseball cards in particular, in the last few years also got into baseball. But if they did, or if there's just some aspect of that that's like, this guy sucks because he doesn't play relative to the timing of when they came into the hobby, there's like synchronicity between those two things. It just leaves you, I wonder how much that will impact the long-term prices of Trout in spite of what we know he did in the 2010s.
One thing I really think hurt Mike Trout, and I've said it a few times on the show over the last year or two, is Ohtani joining the Angels and then being Ohtani really kind of took away. Because right when Ohtani became Ohtani, Trout just became a potato. He was always hurt, unfortunately. I know he won the MVP in 2019, but after that, he just wasn't the same guy. And then it didn't help when Ohtani then goes to the Dodgers and wins the World Series first year. I think that all kind of hurts his legacy alongside not playing. I know he's a one-team guy, which I really respect, but the hobby doesn't really seem to respect it if you don't have success, unfortunately. So,
yeah, when you're a one-team guy and your team's always in last place, it's not the same.
No, exactly. If anything, it hurts your career. Ask Todd Helton. I mean, Todd Helton had the same career for the Yankees. He'd be loved and collected. They'd be calling him Don Mattingly. But anyways, I do have a couple more things on the Kershaw that we can move on from this. But I did have some interesting conversations because when I asked if he was generational, it was 81% said yes. When I did this poll for offensive players for active, the only players that had a higher yes on that question, and I had like 600 or 700 responses, so it's a pretty big sample. It's not small. Was Ohtani at like 95 and Trout at 91. And then there was Judge at 78 and Mookie like at 74 or something like that. So Kershaw is viewed as like the third most generational player that's active, which I think is accurate. I did have someone respond and say, actually, Jacob deGrom had a better peak than Kershaw, and he didn't. He just straight up didn't, which I think is interesting. So here's some stats. What show are we without stats in my decision-making processes? This is DeGrom's best 5 years in a row. And this is Kershaw's best 5 years in a row. Like pretty much the same, if not just better than what DeGrom was doing. And so it's one of those things where he was like DeGrom, but for a decade. Like, let me look at it. Like, this is his baseball reference page. His career ERA now is 2.5. His ERA plus is 156 all time. That is actually tied with DeGrom for fourth all time. But the difference is, look at the innings pitched between all these pitchers. Kershaw's the only one over basically 1,500 innings. So it just shows he's been able to do it for a long time at an elite level. So
maybe with DeGrom, he was better on a per inning basis.
I mean, he did certain
years, like hit a walk rate.
I was wondering if somebody said their peak, were they talking about a single season or something? I don't...
Yeah, because I did the top 5 seasons, and
right.
I mean, Kershaw beats him.
What about
a 9.5? Yeah, his like best season maybe, but other than that, like I don't know, these seasons stack up pretty well.
Yeah,
you're looking at ERA, WAR, wins,
everything.
What about the real stats? Matter.
But and then the last thing is WHIP. He is Clayton Kershaw. Goodness, I have too many tabs up here. I had another one with WHIP, but it's gone. He's second all time in WHIP as well. So great pitcher. Postseason hurts him a little bit, obviously, but I'd love to see that resume without the cheating Astros in 2017, without the random 6-run 0.1 earned 0.1 innings pitched in 2023. So, oh well, 2 World Series right now.
Yeah, two and counting. He hasn't re-signed with the Dodgers yet, but it seems like he doesn't want to go anywhere else. So I'm sure he'll re-up at some point. And then he can pitch like every 7th day or something. They'll figure out a way to keep him on the mound.
We'll retire right before the salary cap goes into effect. So it'll be perfect. He can stay in the Dodgers forever.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this is his last year. He'll get to 3,000 strikeouts, maybe win another championship, call it a career.
What does he need? We talked about it last time, but I forget. How many to get to 3,000? Because I feel like he might see a little card bump. That's a big round number.
He only needs like 20, like 25, I think. And obviously last year we thought he would get there, and then he pitched 7 games before getting shut down. So it's never a given, but I feel like if anyone's as close to a given as possible, it's him there.
Yeah.
So anyways, I picked a pitcher.
Good job, by the way, Scott, for sticking to your New Year's resolutions.
Hey, my resolution was to make one big purchase for that Mookie Betts I was going to buy, and then backed out. So the only card this year that I want to get a big card is a Ohtani. And I will get one. I just know if I got that base Ohtani, I would just want to move it so fast. I just know myself. It would not be a card I want to hold on to. I'd want a parallel. I'd want a refractor. I would want not a BGS 9, like for that card. I just know myself. It would not be it'd be those cards where like all of a sudden a cool Larry Walker 1 of 1 from 1997 pops up, and I'm just like, oh, I'd rather have that. And then I take a small loss on it. That's what it felt like to me, that card.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you would buy it and then move it to one of us when you wanted to go buy that stupid Larry Walker card. You know, we're here to help you lose money on cards if we can.
Thanks, guys.
Just curious, because I said earlier how pitchers actually have value from the 90s, but everything's relative. So, like, what's the ratio of Pedro to a comparable Larry Walker card?
Pedro's higher by a good margin.
Yeah, by 4x or
2
more?
to 3x.
Okay, so pitchers don't really have value still from the 90s.
Oh, shut up. He's on par with some big players. He's not Griffey, he's not Jeter, and he's not Bonds. He's
like 15% of Bonds. No, probably more. Is he like
Pedro's
10%?
Pedro's most expensive sale in the last year was in April of 24, $6,900 for a PSA 8 1999 precious metal gems numbered to 50.
Larry Walker goes for like 2,000 for reference. So they go for, and like other PMGs, how much did look up, Ty, if you wouldn't mind, while you have that in front of you. How much did a Griffey PMG go for recently? I know Bonds has sold like 80 times.
So this was the we talked about a few of these guys. Pedro 6,900, Maddox, Credentials 6,700, PSA 8, Randy
And those
Johnson.
credentials are very different
5,000.
because they can be valuable because they're just more rare. But
yeah. But you were talking, what did you say? A Griffey PMG?
look up a Griffey PMG 19. Make sure it's a 99 PMG.
The 98 did 60,000. Those go for a lot.
Yeah, you can't. It's hard to compare a 98 versus a 99.
I don't know that a 99 is sold in the last year. This would have. Was it on alt?
Oh man,
I
it's
don't
crazy
know.
to think. Is Griffey close to like 10-1 to Pedro? I mean, that seems preposterous. But maybe
No,
not.
that's
As
not
in-
really a comparable
much.
card.
Okay.
Well, this is 10-1 on the 99.
But 98 to 99, like the Larry Walker 99 is like $800.
So Star Rubies,
Yeah.
the Pedro is worth like in a BGS 7 or 8, like it's probably worth like 3,500, right?
Yeah,
The
sounds
Star Ruby
right.
number 50. So then Griffey would be.
I think he's like 10,000,
That's it.
15,000. Unless I'm mistaken. Tyke, do you have it?
Oh, what did you want? The
I'll just look it up.
Maybe the comp I'm talking about was manipulated.
Unless I'm just thinking of the wrong card, Phil, which could be the case. I don't know Griffey's market that well.
No, you're probably right.
10,000, 11 grand, February 1st. So that's why I saw that it went last week for 11 grand, 10,900. So like he's like half of Griffey's Star Ruby. Yeah.
If those sales are real, yeah.
I know the Pedro. I believe the Pedro sale is real because I think I know who bought it. The Star Ruby.
Okay.
Ty was showing the red Kershaw sold for 123 grand, just barely. The red Mookie PSA 10 just sold for 120 grand. So they're basically equivalent, which is partially why I felt like this gold was such a good deal for Kershaw, because their gold 9.5 sell for the same price too. Mookie and Kershaw do. And the Kershaw blue 9.5 is way more than Mookie's blue 9.5 simply because it was harder to get a 9.5 in 2006. But my point is they're more condition sensitive. The golds, I know they're both numbered to 50, but it's not the same because Mookie has 1 billion refractors numbered to out of 50 and out of 10 and out of all these different things. And so because they're kind of equivalent, I thought, would I pay the price I paid for a BGS 8 Mookie Gold? Yes, I would. And so that answered the question pretty easily for me, if I'm being honest. Because they're kind of similar in pricing everywhere where they have a similar card. So anyways, I know that's hard to do, but and then also
That's interesting. Like to me, when you say that, that makes me feel like Mookie is so undervalued.
I mean, it's the best pitcher generation who's a one-team player that everybody loves. Mookie kind of gets overshadowed by quite a few hitters. I love Mookie.
Wouldn't be a Spitballin episode without us talking about Mookie.
I'm kind of passionate, right?
Grade scarcity is a thing. So Betts has way more in like PSA 9 or BGS 9 plus versus Kershaw for that card. So that
Absolutely.
it's hard to compare them from that perspective. Maybe that's why it looks like it was such a great deal. But if you're saying that you would buy a BGS 8 Mookie for the same price, then yeah, obviously the Kershaw is a better deal relative to that if their top end parallels are similar. Even though pitchers don't always get the same multipliers, but that would apply to gold too. Like the gold, if it's 10x for hitters versus the base, then the pitcher would be less. And then for reds and orange, you take it down even more. So it's all relative there.
Also, last thing, and then we can wrap this episode. Is the reason I also went with the Kershaw versus trying to get the Trout and selling cards is I could get the Kershaw and buy a few extra cards I've been targeting for a long time. I hate showing cards that I don't have in hand before I have them in hand because I always feel like it jinxes it. But I was also able to buy a couple cards I really wanted because I got the Kershaw. So I got a Star Ruby's Larry Walker, which is one of his very best cards. And I got the Essential Credentials Now of Larry Walker, which I've wanted for a long time. And then I got this cool Goldschmidt logo man for like $300, which I thought was cool. So I got these three plus the Kershaw for a good deal, I felt like. So, anywho.
I'm excited you're buying cards.
Well, my money's gone. So I have to just delete eBay, delete Instagram,
And
never
drop
be
this
on
podcast.
Spitballin. Yep, it's over. All right. Any final thoughts?
I look forward to the next time we're doing this, and we're trying to figure out which Ohtani and Ohtani only that you're going to buy.
I'm going to do it. People doubt me, but I'm going to do it eventually. It's just I have to wait for the right card and the right time. I will do it. So I don't know.
I bought a
People think
Kerry
we're-
Carpenter rainbow foil if we want to talk about that for
Oh.
30 minutes.
I love it.
Ty, Scott was just about to contradict the very thing that he said.
No. I was going to say, do you agree with me that like my thought process on the BGS 9 rock hard review and why I didn't go with that one for that price? It was $8,500.
I mean, you know yourself better than we do.
Yeah.
I don't know. If I did not have any Ohtani, he would be the only person I'd be shopping for right now.
I'll buy anybody
Without
and
distraction, tunnel vision only. Like I wouldn't be looking at anyone else. Even as it is, it's hard to look at anyone else. And I look at Freddie Freeman all the time. His cards. I look at his cards all the time. That sounded very stalkerish. His cards. I look at his cards all the time.
Is that why you live in LA now?
Let's not get into it.
All right, guys. On that note, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of the card I purchased, and I'll see you in the next video.